Datuk Seri, there's this perception, rightly or wrongly, that the Malay votes have gone back to Barisan. Even cases of Indian votes have gone back to
True.
Barisan. But the Chinese votes have sort of remained status quo, still very much anti-establishment. Assuming that an early election is called, what will be the implication if the Chinese votes do not go to Barisan? Would there be a question of being left out of the federal government if the Barisan is still in control?
Well, we may then create a scenario where the government of the day is there because of the support of the Malays and Indians, and that the Chinese will be left on the opposing side. Because if the Chinese do not support, say, component parties of BN, including MCA or other Chinese-based party, then our representation may be reduced drastically. But the government that is constituted will then be made up of Malays and Indians. So this is something that is not healthy.
Would you see, in the case of Sarawak, where people are expecting a state election to be called, the forecast is that it will not be difficult for Barisan to retain the state government, but in urban areas which are predominantly Chinese, that situation may arise. Would you see this situation as the first of its kind?
Oh, there's every possibility that the Sarawak state election will have a situation, a political situation or scenario, where the state government is constituted because of the support of the non-Chinese. And all the Chinese-dominated area will be represented by opposition. This is something also, number one, it may create a situation where the power to be says that we don't have to worry about the Chinese. Whatever you do, the Chinese still oppose you. And since we can form the government, we just look after the non-Chinese. And I think this is bad. This is bad. But that is politics.
That's right, yeah.
And we hope that the Chinese should realize and accept the fact that this is a multiracial country.
What are when you have this sort of challenges facing, obstacles in front of you as an MCA president, what do you need to overcome? Obviously, some of these factors, matter of perception, and sometimes it's even factors which are beyond the control of the MCA. How do you handle the situation?
Well, it's going to be a very challenging task to us. DAP has been very successful in creating the impression, or the perception, that the Barisan National Government, because it's dominated by one component party and one particular race, it only looks after the Bumiputra. And it doesn't look after the rest. And that has been quite deeply entrenched among the Chinese, that the government of the day has succeeded in only looking after the non-Chinese. And that MCA has failed to protect the Chinese. And I feel that this is rather unfortunate, because this statement is not totally true. I think since we achieved independence, all the races have, I would say, developed and improved. Of course, there's this racial divide still. And to say that the government do not take care of all races in this country is a very unfair statement.
The government has recently announced that for those students who has 9 A's and above, they will have automatic qualification for scholarships. That's unprecedented. Your views on this?
Well, when we had a dialogue with the Prime Ministers and Deputy Prime Minister with regard to the 10 Malaysia plan, and I told the Prime Minister very clearly that we will continue to face serious brain drain problem. Because if all the young men goes overseas to study, it is very unlikely that they ever come back, most of them. And the equal opportunity and accessibility to education, especially at tertiary level, is important. And one of the steps that the government can do to plug this drainage or leakages of talent overseas is to ensure that all our bright young people be given scholarship. And so we thank the Prime Minister for responding accordingly, so that all those with 9As and above, 9A plus and above, are given scholarship.
Just you mentioned that the Pakatan, where they are now ruling Penang and Selangor, the leaders are still acting like they are still in opposition with their rhetorics. But would you also feel that in the cases of Barisan component party leaders in these states, many of them have this tendency to think they are still in government, relying on the federal government for support?
Oh yes. This is one of the biggest problems that my party faces. That our leaders in Pakatan control states are still behaving as if they are in power. So they have not been able to play the role as an opposition well. They should be monitoring the role, monitoring the performance of Pakatan Rakyat, whether they have lived up to the expectation of the Rakyat, whether they have fulfilled the manifesto, or whether their leaders have been talking with making anti-promises. These are roles that MCA leaders should play in Pakatan Rakyat control state. But unfortunately, the number of people who can play that role is very limited.
For historical reason and also perhaps because of practical reason, the three component parties in Barisan, UMNO, MCA and MIC, they have sort of like work on its own base, representing the interests of the community. But there's also this perception that it is unable to function as one Barisan component, representing the interests of all communities. Like for example, the UMNO leaders will speak about Malay interests, MCA talk about Chinese interests. Would there come to some point where you talk about Malaysian interests?
Oh, of late, since I took over, we felt that we should be issue-centered, and not on ethnicity. In other words, it should be issue-centric rather than ethnic-centric. And I think everybody practice that. Then it will help to promote a more healthy political culture of multi-racialism, rather than being looking after your own pigeonhole, one particular race. And so we feel that we should be non-racial, we should be issue-focused.
Datuk Seri, there has been all sort of speculation, but do you see a general election being called over the next 12 months, your analysis?
If you ask me, now it's July, I feel that it is unlikely.
Okay.
Very unlikely.
And finally, on a personal note, would you be contesting in the next general election if given the opportunity?
I would say that it's too long from now to next year to speculate.
Okay.
So I don't think I'm in a position to say I want to stand or I don't want to stand.
Okay. Thank you so much, Datuk Seri.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Datuk Seri, for spending your time with us in the Star. On that note, I'd like to tell everybody thank you so much for spending time with us and watching this program. Thank you so much.